Welcome back, everybody, for another deep dive.
Hmm.
Today we are going to be going through some pretty intense source material, actually.
Right.
We've got audio recordings from a Sex and Love Addicts Anonymous meeting.
Wow.
And, we're going to hear from both addicts themselves and their partners as they kind of share their experiences and their struggles.
Mm.
And I'm really hoping this deep dive will help us
Yeah,
understand, some of the challenges of sex and love addiction
absolutely.
and look at the impact it has on relationships and how people try to find a path
Yeah, the ripple effect.
to recovery,
Yeah.
the ripple effect for sure. And I think what's particularly interesting about these recordings is that they offer such raw and honest perspectives.
Yeah.
These meetings are confidential for a reason.
Right.
And so we get this really unique window into a world that's often shrouded in secrecy and shame.
It's a privilege to hear these stories.
It is. And one of the stories that really stood out to me was Kate's. She talks about her journey as the partner of an addict
Right.
and the turbulent waters they had to navigate as a couple. But before we dive into Kate's experience,
Yeah.
I think it's important to start with the addict's perspective.
Okay, sure.
One thing that really struck me was their initial resistance to this whole idea of powerlessness.
Oh, yeah.
It's almost like they were fighting tooth and nail against admitting that
Sure.
they had a problem.
Well, and it makes you think about the nature of addiction in general, right?
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
struggle to acknowledge the issue.
Yeah, and what's interesting is they describe all these elaborate strategies they use
Oh, really?
to control their behavior, like
Yeah.
switching partners,
Right.
moving to different cities,
Mm-hmm.
even drastic things like converting to a new religion.
As if they could just outrun it.
Exactly. It's like they were on this constant treadmill trying
Yeah.
to escape the problem, but it just kept catching up.
It's like a hamster wheel, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
A hamster wheel. They even talk about this concept called half surrender.
Half surrender. What's that?
So it's where they try to narrowly define their addiction.
Okay.
They'll tackle certain behaviors but hold on to others.
Okay.
So, for example, someone might swear off casual sex,
Okay.
but still struggle with online relationships.
Oh, I see. So they're drawing these very specific lines.
Exactly. And it's like they're trying to hold back a flood, but the water's still pouring in.
It's not addressing the root of the issue.
Right. And that brings us to a crucial point.
Okay.
True surrender isn't about picking and choosing.
Right.
It's about recognizing that their whole approach to sex and love is distorted.
It's like a computer program with faulty code.
Yeah.
You can't just tweak a few things. You need to address the underlying program itself.
Absolutely. It's a complete shift in perspective.
Yeah.
And this is where the concept of a higher power comes in,
Okay.
which initially met with a lot of resistance.
You can imagine.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, for someone whose identity is so intertwined with their addiction,
Right.
faith can feel like a real threat.
It's admitting they're not in total control.
Exactly. But then something really interesting happens.
What's that?
They start hearing other addicts share their stories of recovery.
Mm-hmm.
And suddenly, this little flicker of hope emerges.
Oh, that's beautiful.
It is. It's like they see that a different path is possible.
So the higher power becomes less of a threat and more of a possibility.
Exactly. It shifts from something to fear to something to maybe even embrace.
That's powerful.
Yeah. And from there, they start to confront their own shortcomings through this thing called a moral inventory.
A moral inventory. That sounds intense.
It is. It's this deep dive into their own patterns and behaviors.
So they're forced to really examine themselves.
Exactly. They're uncovering these deep-seated issues that have been fueling the addiction.
Okay.
Like one guy realized he always went for partners with specific physical characteristics.
Oh, wow.
And a woman realized she always fell into the role of the rescuer.
Interesting. So these are like subconscious patterns they're discovering.
Yeah, and facing them is incredibly difficult.
I can imagine.
They talk about headaches, exhaustion, even feeling physically ill.
It's like they're going through withdrawal.
In a way, they are. They're detoxing from their own harmful behaviors.
It's like ripping off a bandage.
Yeah.
Painful but necessary.
Exactly. And through that pain comes a sense of relief.
Relief.
Like they finally acknowledge the elephant in the room.
And this paves the way for making amends.
Right. Which is another huge step in the recovery process.
Making amends. So they're taking responsibility for the harm they've caused.
Yeah, it's not just about apologizing.
Right.
It's about shifting their focus from what they're owed to what they owe others.
It's about making things right.
Exactly. And it takes immense courage
I'll be
because it
doing it.
involves swallowing their pride and admitting fault.
It's a humbling experience.
It is. But what's really remarkable is that making amends becomes an act of love.
An act of love.
How so?
Because it's fueled by a genuine desire to heal those relationships.
So it's coming from a place of wanting to repair the damage they've caused. Exactly. And that brings us to the partner's experience, which we'll explore through Kate's story.
Okay, I'm ready to hear about Kate.
Kate's story is just, it's so powerful.
Yeah.
She talks about this journey she went on from denial to finally accepting
Right.
that her husband, Rich, was struggling with sex and love addiction.
Okay.
And it's heartbreaking to
Yeah.
hear her describe all the ways that she tried to rationalize his behavior.
So she was in denial for a while.
Oh, yeah. And she talks about, feeling this intense sense of betrayal
Right.
and anger. And it makes sense,
Of course.
given, what she was going through.
I mean, how could you not?
And it's so common for partners to get caught in this agonizing cycle
Okay.
of hope and disappointment.
Right.
They desperately want to believe that their loved one is going to change,
Yeah.
but the addiction just keeps pulling them back in.
It's a powerful force.
It is. Kate mentions using all these coping mechanisms,
Like what?
things like blame shifting, rationalizing Rich's actions.
Oh.
Anything to avoid facing that really harsh reality.
Right. It's easier to look away.
It's like she was building these walls around herself to protect her heart.
It's a natural defense mechanism.
It is, and it really highlights the incredible emotional burden that partners carry.
Yeah.
They're constantly trying to make sense of their loved one's behavior
Right.
while also dealing with their own hurt and confusion.
Absolutely. It's like they're living in two different realities at the same time.
Exactly, and that's where Al-Anon comes in.
Al-Anon.
Yeah, it's a support group for family and friends of addicts.
Okay.
And for Kate, it was a lifeline.
How so?
She finally found this community of people
Okay.
who truly understood her pain
Right.
and could offer support without judgment.
So there's that sense of shared experience.
Exactly. And one thing that really resonated with her was this concept of detachment.
Detachment.
Yeah, it's not about abandoning the addict.
Okay.
It's about recognizing that you can't control their choices.
So it's about letting go,
Exactly, letting go of that need to fix them.
which is so hard.
It is. It's incredibly difficult. But Kate learned to separate her well-being from Rich's addiction.
Wow.
And that allowed her to reclaim her own sense of agency.
So it's about shifting the focus from the addict to yourself.
Exactly. And Al-Anon teaches partners
Yeah.
to set boundaries, to prioritize their own needs.
Right.
And to recognize that they are not responsible for the addict's choices.
It's like putting on your own oxygen mask first.
Exactly. And for Kate, this was crucial
Yeah.
in rebuilding her self-esteem and starting that process of healing.
So it's about taking care of yourself.
It is. It's about self-preservation. And it laid the groundwork
Okay.
for reconciliation with Rich.
Okay, so they did eventually try to reconcile.
They did. But it wasn't easy.
I can imagine.
They actually sought counseling,
Okay.
which provided a safe space for them to address,
Okay.
the damage that the addiction had caused.
So they had professional help to guide them.
Exactly. And one technique they found really helpful
What's that?
was writing impact letters.
Impact letters.
So Rich would write about
Oh, wow.
the specific ways his actions had hurt Kate.
Oh, that's powerful.
And she would share
Okay.
how his addiction had affected her emotionally and psychologically.
So it's about going beyond just saying, I'm sorry.
Exactly. It forces them to really confront the depth of the pain involved.
It's about understanding the impact.
Exactly. And counseling was great, but it wasn't a magic cure.
Right.
They still faced tons of challenges.
Like what?
Well, Kate talks about this constant struggle to rebuild trust.
Yeah.
Every time Rich went to an SLAA meeting,
Okay.
she'd worry that he might relapse.
It makes sense. There's that fear of the unknown.
It's like walking on eggshells,
Mm-hmm.
always wondering if the ground beneath you is going to crack.
So it's about managing expectations.
It is. And realizing that recovery is a long-term process.
It's not a quick fix.
It's not. And it's full of setbacks and breakthroughs, right?
And Kate learned
yeah.
that forgiveness doesn't happen overnight.
It takes time.
It does. And that rebuilding trust requires consistent effort
From both sides.
from both sides.
Yeah.
So it's this constant dance
Mm,
of support and self-preservation.
I like that analogy.
And that's where the real strength of their partnership shines through.
How so?
Despite the ongoing challenges,
Mhm.
managing triggers, respecting boundaries,
Right.
accepting Rich's ongoing need for SLAA,
Okay.
their love for each other remained.
That's beautiful.
Kate talks about this transformative power of forgiveness, how it allowed her to experience a deeper and more authentic connection with Rich.
Wow. So they were able to rebuild something even stronger.
They were. And it's inspiring to hear that even after such turmoil,
Yeah.
their relationship could evolve into something more resilient.
It gives you hope.
It's pretty clear that having that support system is essential.
Absolutely.
We hear a lot about that in the SLAA meeting.
The 12-step program seems to be so important for so many people's recovery.
It's a cornerstone for a lot of folks.
Yeah.
And it's interesting how they've adapted the traditional 12 steps,
Right.
originally from Alcoholics Anonymous, to specifically address the challenges of sex and love addiction.
Right. It's not just a simple swap, right?
No, definitely not. It's much more nuanced than that.
Yeah, they're not just replacing alcohol with sex and love.
Right. It goes much deeper.
It's about changing their whole approach to relationships.
Exactly.
Intimacy, and even their own desires. I'm curious about the concept of surrender in this context.
Okay.
I mean, it's one thing to give up a substance, but giving up a way of relating to the world that seems way more difficult.
It is. It's a huge challenge. For someone with sex and love, addiction surrendering to a higher power often means dismantling this carefully constructed persona.
Okay.
This set of defenses they've built to protect themselves from being vulnerable. It's about acknowledging that they need help and letting go of that illusion of control, which can be terrifying.
Yeah, especially when so much of their self-worth is tied up in their addiction.
Exactly.
So as we've said, it's not just about changing behaviors.
No.
It's this profound internal shift.
Absolutely. And that's where the moral inventory is so powerful.
Yeah.
It's about digging deep and confronting uncomfortable truths about themselves.
We talked about how draining that can be.
It is. It's like shining a light on all the messy stuff they've been trying to avoid.
Right, like detoxing from their own harmful behaviors.
Exactly. And that's where that support network comes in. Those SLAA meetings give them a space to share their struggles without judgment and learn from others who've been there.
And speaking of sharing, making amends comes up a lot.
It does. It's a key part of recovery.
And it's not just about apologizing, right?
It's more than that. It's about truly understanding the impact of their actions, recognizing the pain they've caused, and making a genuine effort to repair the damage.
It's about taking responsibility.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And sometimes making direct amends just isn't possible.
Yeah.
Reaching out could cause further harm.
Right.
So it's about finding other ways to make things right.
So it's a really sensitive process.
It is.
But I can imagine it's also incredibly empowering.
Definitely. It allows them to take concrete steps toward healing.
So we've looked at the addict's perspective, the partner's experience, and the power of that SLAA community.
Yeah.
It's clear that sex and love addiction is a really complex issue. But beyond the addiction itself, what can we take away from all this?
Well, I think what's most striking is how this topic really illuminates the human condition in general.
Okay.
We all crave connection, we all have vulnerabilities, and we all have this amazing capacity for healing.
Yeah.
These stories offer a glimpse into the darker side of desire, but they also reveal the incredible resilience of the human spirit.
It's a good reminder that even when things feel really tough,
Yeah,
there's always hope.
absolutely. And sometimes that understanding and empathy are the very first steps towards healing.
And not just for the individual, but for their relationships too.
Exactly. It ripples outward.
So maybe the biggest question to think about is this. How does understanding these experiences, both from the addict's side and the partner's side, deepen our understanding of human relationships as a whole?
That's a big one.
It is. What can we learn from their struggles and their triumphs about communication, forgiveness, the power of love?
It makes you reflect on your own life.
It does, and the lives of those around you.
It's a reminder that we're all connected in some way.
We are, and that we all have a story to tell.
And within those stories lies the potential for growth and deeper connection.
That's a beautiful thought to end on. Thank you so much for joining me on this deep dive.
It's been a privilege.